Alright guys, next up here is marking and cutting. For your KYDEX, it's very easy to cut. You'll want to lay it out first. So when you do, say, a gun holster, you want to determine how much you need. Typically the back rides up farther, so you'll need a longer length here, 8-9 inches depending on the gun. I always give myself about a ½ inch extra on each side. You may want to give yourself a little more depending on your experience, just to cut off a trim, and especially when you bend. When you go to bend this angle, the KYDEX, about an 1/8 inch of shrinkage. So it'll make, it'll two pieces where they're put together will spread or come apart, and when you push it over. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But anyway, you want some good tools for layout. I do use cutting mats sometimes. I got certain stuff marked on here for different sizes that the sheets I do a lot of, so that comes in handy. But pencil, I use that. I do use chalk once in a while, but I found the pencil, if you don't push hard, you just want to do a light line on it. I need the pencil for when I do mine to keep all my holes nice and straight. It gives me a nice thin line that I can run with it. I have a bigger, this is for cutting out rough, for cutting the initial square of KYDEX in the bandsaw. So just a long straight edge, and then a more precise one that I use for hole layout and everything. And this is a flexible, so when I'm running across, it'll bend down and I can get a nice accurate line on it. So a couple tools I recommend. Another guy on YouTube just recommended a Stabilo pencil, a marking pencil. That would be a great idea. I haven't tried those yet. I'm going to order a couple and give them a try. So that's another option. I've just been using a carpenter's pencil for some of my marking. When I run my fire steels on the backside, I'll use a Sharpie. It's the perfect size. Put through the hole, wiggle a little bit, and then for drilling holes. If there's overmark on this, it gets drilled off anyway. It's not that big a deal. Do not use marker or pen on this stuff. It won't come off it. And then also with your pencil, very light, just so you can see it. You don't want to just gouge onto it, because then you'll be trying to erase it out of there. For erasing, I do use just a white eraser. This works really well for the pencil. I haven't had any trouble with that. And then for cutting the KYDEX, you can use a scroll saw. I've used that before. I don't have it down here anymore. There is a lot of bounce to a scroll saw, so if you're going to use a scroll saw, be very careful not to leave it floating in the air, because when you have all this stuff, let's see, it's not even. This edge, it'll either bounce down on you, so you got to make sure that's supported. The thing that I like, you can use the tin snips. I wouldn't recommend it for the finished product, but it will work to cut your rough out. I'll move over here to the bandsaw. The bandsaw works the best, in my opinion, for cutting the KYDEX. It keeps a straight pull down. It's safer. It does a really nice job. I just use a wood blade on this, and it does a great job. So that's what I recommend for cutting the KYDEX. Alright, next we'll move on to heating it. Alright, for heating the KYDEX, I use a toaster oven. You can very easily use your oven in your house. I've actually had to use that on some of my bigger sheets. I had an 18-inch one that I had to do. I just went upstairs, put it in the oven. So that's an excellent way to do bigger pieces, even small ones. It gives you a nice even heat, and it just works really well. And then also, we go to the heat gun. This, I believe, is a necessity when you're going to do KYDEX. You can heat it up in the oven, press it, and be happy with what happens, but it's typically not the case. I used to put my fingers on this camera here. Once you get it pressed and cut out where you want it, there's always touch-up. The knife will either go in really hard, and that gives you, the heat gun gives you the opportunity to heat up your retention to get it where you want. Also, if you notice, like on this is a RD6 sheath. I don't know if you can see it with the camera. It kind of bends out there. That's all after it's been pressed. I'll go through and get the retention right, and I'll put a little bump out here to, that's got to be heated up. Same with my belt loop. That's all after the pressing process. I'll heat up that back strap, and I've got some wood blocks that I press. That's another good thing to have on hand is wood blocks. We'll get into pressing next after heating it here. But heat time, I don't know exact time in the oven. I've never really timed it, but I just always check it when in between the grates when I can push it really well. You don't want it to curl up. Once it starts getting wavy on the edges, it's too hot. You want it before that. It should be nice and pliable. And I heat mine in the oven. My oven is set on anyway. I'm sure every oven is different. I noticed my oven upstairs heats a little faster. I set it at 275, and it's no more than 5 minutes. It's not even that. It's in there, and then it's real nice and pliable. With a heat gun, you want to be careful. Just take your time with the heat gun. If you say you want to heat up this front here, and you put the heat gun too close, or sit it in one spot too long, this KYDEX will get a glaze on it, and it looks lousy. It kind of takes away the nice finish, and you don't want to get that glaze. So when you're using your heat gun, it's kind of slow circular motions, and just watch it. Every once in a while, just stop, check it, see how it is, go back to it. You don't have to keep the gun in one spot. You don't want to do that. It'll put a glaze to your KYDEX, and just ruin the overall finish of it. If you're doing it for yourself, it doesn't matter, but since I'm selling them, I need to make sure they're as uniform as possible and look professional. So, here's a couple tips for heating it there. Like I said, some sort of oven at 275. I really like the heat guns for touch-up and everything. You can, if you get one of these at home and the retention's a little off, like say it's too tight or too loose, you can heat this with a hairdryer and then just push on it, hold it where you want it, and it will adjust the retention somewhat. So for the heating up the gun holsters, I actually have a timer I use, and I will put these in the press. We'll get to presses in a little bit. I'll put this in the press for 8 minutes. I don't like to, we'll get into that again, presses, but 8 minutes. That allows me to still bend the edges of my KYDEX while holding the look on the sheath. So, set 8 minutes in the press after heating it will slowly allow you some play in bending it and stuff. So that helps a little bit instead of having to reheat it and bend it again. But alright, well that is how I like to heat my KYDEX. Next we'll go to presses. Alright, before I get to presses here, I want to touch on something to prepping your knives or your guns to be pressed. I just get some painter's blue tape. This allows me to thicken my blade a little bit so I don't have retention or it doesn't slide on my blade. Also with a firearm, it depends on the gun. Come out of there. I will put some tape along the back side, and some guns that have a real deep groove, like this is a blue gun so it doesn't, but they'll have the notch up top here from the barrel. I will fill that. I'll take little pieces of KYDEX, depending on the sheath, or depending on the holster, and actually tape that up. When I put my light on here for light retention, you have to prep the gun. So you want to make sure any rough areas, like on the XD has that the takedown lever here. I will tape a strip of KYDEX along the back there, so you get good retention smooth draw coming out. You have to do that with the thicker KYDEX. With the thinner stuff, it's not that big of a deal. It'll pop and move. But like especially with the mag holder, you can see this is an AK-47 mag holder. I actually tape on a channel basically of KYDEX for the back, because you got that lug there for your locking into the gun. That's one of the reasons you can't get a mag holder to work with these. You got to tape in a channel so it pulls out, and then also on top here, you can see that it's kind of you can see the imprint of a piece of KYDEX there. That gives me a little wider up top, so when I reholster it, it goes in nice. So, just some tips and tricks. You want to get some blue tape and keep your scrap KYDEX. It works great for cutting to whatever you need. Oh, also, heating, before we move on to pressing here. Gloves. I just use, these are some Wells Lamont, just some deer skin or whatever gloves. They work really well for the KYDEX. That's all I use them here for. That's all you need. You don't need big welding gloves. And they would actually get clumsy once you get into pressing. In my opinion, you want something that's a little better for the touch so you can manipulate it the way you want, especially when you're using the heat gun. So, alright, now I think we can move into pressing.